Now here's the kicker, verse John 12:37. But though he had done so many miracles before them, yet they believed not on him. All right. Now this is interesting. Even though Jesus has risen Lazarus from the dead and did all these things, there were still people who were hard-hearted who didn't believe on him. And maybe that's the reason Jesus didn't put a lot of emphasis on miracles, because he said, hey, it's all about the heart. It's all about you serving God. It's all about you glorifying God. All these signs and wonders are not going to mean anything if you're still not going to believe on me. All right. There were many people who believed, but they still had a hard heart. All right. And why is that? Well, in verse 38, it says that the saying of Isaiah, this is Isaiah the prophet, might be fulfilled, which he spake. Lord, who hath believed our report? And to whom hath the arm of the Lord been revealed? You can find this in Isaiah 53:1. We won't turn to it right now. Therefore, they could not believe, because that Isaiah said again, he had blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them. That's in Isaiah 6:10. These things that Isaiah, when he saw his glory and spake of him. All right, now let's stop right there. It says right here in the books of, this is quotes from Isaiah 53 and Isaiah 6. It says that God has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them. Now, many people will look at this and say, aha, this is Calvinism. God has already decided who he wants saved and who he doesn't want saved, because it says right here that he's blinded their eyes, he's hardened their hearts so they cannot be converted. Okay, this is not what that is saying right there, that God decides who he wants to be saved and who he doesn't want to be saved. That is not what that is saying right there. What this is saying right here is that once you have rejected Jesus so many times, God is just going to give you over to a reprobate mind, and he's just going to let you do whatever you want to do. All right? That is what they're saying. Okay? Just like in the Old Testament, where it talks about that God hardened Pharaoh's heart when Moses tried to preach to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh refused to let the people go. That started initially with Pharaoh not believing and trusting in God. And so God just took it to the next level. He says, okay, I'm just going to harden his heart, because he's already not believing. He's already not acting right. Okay? Let me give you some proof text of this real quick, because this is a talking point for a lot of Calvinists who thinks that they have this 5-point principle that says that God decides who's going to get saved, and God decides who doesn't get saved. No, God knows who's going to be saved, and he knows who's not going to be saved. But God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come into repentance. All right? Jesus died for everyone. All right? Let me just give you some quick proof text of this. I'll give you an Old Testament example and then a New Testament example of what I'm talking about, so this makes sense. Turn to Proverbs 1. Proverbs is right after Psalm. I don't want to go through all the books of the Old Testament. It's towards the middle of the Old Testament. So if you can hit Psalm, just turn to your right to Proverbs. I want you to look at the first chapter of Proverbs, and I'm going to have to go through this pretty quickly because our time is up. And I'm going to try to give you an Old Testament example and a New Testament example of what I'm talking about here, so that you won't have people telling you, well, you don't have a choice. God decides if you get, he chooses who he wants to save and who he doesn't want to save. Okay, so let's look here. Proverbs 1 and 22. Proverbs 1st chapter 22. Are we there? Okay. It says, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my proof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. This is God. He said, hey, I'm pouring out my spirit on you. I'm going to let you know who I am. I'm presenting myself before you. I'm giving you the gospel. Verse 24, because I have called, and what? Ye refused. So it's not like God isn't putting forth an effort for these people to be saved. It's just that they refused. Ye refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regardeth. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I will also laugh at your calamity. You say, wow, that's not very Christian-like. Well, God is God. He can do what he wants to do. All right? I will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. when your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. You see, what's going to happen is, when this world comes to an end, of course, we'll be raptured out of here. Everybody's going to be blaspheming the Lord. They're going to be blaspheming God. They're going to be against God. You're going to have people like this church who are going to be trying to tell people, turn to Jesus, turn to Jesus. They're not going to hear it. But then when we're raptured out of here and death and destructions come, they're going to say, oh, Lord. And what does God say? God says here in verse 28, he says, I will not answer. You're going to call for me then, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. There's another passage of scripture in Isaiah that says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Well, if that verse is in there, then that's telling you that God's not going to always be around. So you better grab a hold to him while you can. Well, we'll just go here a little further. Verse 29, for they that hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord. They had a choice. It wasn't that God decided you're going to get sick, you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to heaven. No, they had a choice. He's telling them. But there's going to reach a point where it's going to be too late. There's going to be a point of no return. Verse 30, they would none of my counsel, they despised all of my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way, and be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from the fear of evil. That's the very first chapter of Proverbs. If you hearken unto me, you'll be safe. But if you do what these other people are doing, I'm going to laugh at your calamity. It's going to be too late for you. Proof text for New Testament proof text, and then we got to go. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. I'm going to give you a New Testament proof of this same thing, and then we got to go. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. First chapter. Romans, the first chapter, starting at the 28th verse. Romans, the first chapter, starting at the 28th verse. This is New Testament proof that God reaches a point where he's just going to give up on you. It says right here, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God did what? Gave them over. All right? There's going to reach a point where God's going to get tired of dealing with people who refuse him. God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God? They knew the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death. Not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. All right? There's going to reach a point of no return. There's going to reach a point of no return. There is so much that God is going to let you go so far, and then there's going to reach a point where he says, okay, I'm done. I'm going to turn you over. Now, parents, to a lesser extent, we may do some of this sometimes, and I know we got to go. Sometimes we as parents will tell our child over and over again, bless you, do this, do this, do this, do this. And the child won't listen, and you say, okay. Go ahead. All right. And then that child gets in trouble and they say, Mom or Dad, I'm in trouble. Well, I told you. Now, the difference there is that your child will always be your child. Okay. But what God is talking about here, God is talking about those that do not believe in him. God will call upon them. God will present himself to them. But if they refuse him, God is going to reach a point where he says, okay, I'm going to turn you over. According to Proverbs 1, according to Romans 1, I'm going to turn you over to your own ways. I'm going to turn you over to your own devices to do that which is not convenient. And according to the book of Isaiah, your hearts will be hardened, you're going to be blinded, and there'll be no way you can be converted because I'm done with you. Now you say, oh, is that God-like? Is that Christian-like? That's, God is long-suffering towards usward. He is not willing that any should perish. But there's going to be a point of no return. Okay? And that's why we try to emphasize when we talk about salvation, we say now is the acceptable time. We need to get saved today because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Okay? You can say, well, I'm thinking about getting saved, and then you die tonight. Guess what? when you're standing before the throne of God, God's not going to count, oh yeah, you were thinking about getting, no. He's going to say, welcome to hell. Well, he's not going to say it like that, but I'm just saying it's going to be too late. So this is why we need to get, for those of us who are born again Christians, we need to emphasize to people, now is the time, because God is going to reach a point where there's going to be a point of no return. And he tells us that in both the Old Testament and New Testament. Okay, we're going to have to dismiss. Do we have any other questions or comments? I know I kind of rushed through that. We'll pick up the rest of John the 12th chapter next time, Lord willing, okay? All right.